Morning, Zoom friends. Can you hear me okay? Give me a thumbs up if you can. Oh, great, thank you. And morning, room friends. Can you hear me okay? Good, we're standing up. So we'll play to start. Feet close or together. Toes spread. Arms by the sides. Really spreading out the base of the big toe is useful because the base of the big toe has sesamoid bones, two bones. The sesamoid bone is a bone that sits in a muscle tendon and it increases the power of the muscle thereby, like a sort of fulcrum. So the sesamoid bones in the feet towards the base of the big toe, not on the big toe itself, but on the ball of the foot. And if you lift and land the big toe side of your foot, you might be able to feel contact with those bony prominences. And that can make a huge difference to your balance everywhere, right the way through the body. So I like to lift and land and really feel my own way into that. And that, of course, continues. It's just because one can't speak simultaneously different instructions, but it doesn't mean when you hear a second instruction that the first is finished. So we can talk about the chest lifting, the arms being heavy, the breath being natural. So we've got really from the feet to the crown and everything between. We're attempting to feel those sesamoid bones on the balls of the feet on the big toe side. The arms as if you're holding irresistibly heavy shopping bags of equal weight that pull down on the outer collarbones, that you then will feel, I'm sure, a drive to counter push up from the pelvic floor. There's a sort of support. If you don't feel that support in the pelvic floor, it feels like everything's sort of energetically dropping down instead of this rising up, as the Hatha texts tell us, and there's a rising and descending in some of the tantric texts. So buoyancy at the pelvic floor, sesamoid bones on the balls of the feet reiterated, crown of the head up, heavy weights on the hands, outer collarbones drawn down, and then that counter pull, pelvic floor through the central channel. So you feel two opposing forces simultaneously relating to each other, a downward force, apana, and an upward force, prana. And they happen together. And this is this meeting of these two forces, this simultaneous arising of these two forces, that the Yoga Bīja text tells us is why what the meaning, a deeper meaning of hatha is. The meeting of these two forces, prana and apana, represented by the sun and the moon. Now let your arms lift or float. And we've said in the past, like there are balloons inflating. If that metaphor works for you, then use that one. And as the balloons get bigger and bigger, the arms come together. And of course, you're going to want to suck in your tummy and reiterate that stability of the pelvic floor. So it doesn't feel like everything's dropping. In the past, some yoga teachers have attempted to describe it as like tucking the tailbone, but I think it's a bad instruction because it's too local, too locally anatomical, and it takes attention away from the energetic and therefore the more holistic meaning of the buoyancy of the pelvic floor. So we've got the tummy drawn in, we've got the buoyancy of the pelvic floor, we're stretching the side ribs, we're attempting our best to find and re-find the pelvic floor, find and re-find, and then take a big wide circle, and the hands come to the heart. And this is tadāsana namaskara. So deep breaths, again, we're going to reiterate the feet. That is to say, we're going to lift and land the feet without holding the breath. And then we're going to go ahead and raise up the right heel and then reach down and help it up to tree pose wherever, ankle, cupping the knee, or higher up. We know that in texts, that we don't find any clear instruction about where the foot should be, and in iconography usually the foot is fairly low, around the knee or even lower. So breathing through the nose to yourself, relaxing if you want. Surfing is a good word for it, I think. And it brings further awakeness to the foot arches. And I think there's lots of instincts that you can go with. That pelvic floor buoyancy might be one. Spinal lightness as well. Release your hands, place your foot, take a deep breath in case you were holding it. And back to tadāsana. So again, we'll go through from the base, spreading out your toes, particularly the big toe, to really land the sesamoid bones, which are two prominences of bones in the feet. The kneecaps are also sesamoid bones, just in case you're interested. You also have sesamoid bones in your hands. It's a bone that's bedded into muscle tendon. But the sesamoid bones on the feet are at the base of the big toe, on the ball of the foot, on the big toe side. And by lifting and landing, you might, if you're calm and the tissue begins to soften, you might be able to feel those bones, which are sort of 2 points on each foot, on the ball of the foot, on the big toe side. Calmness conditions connection, so sometimes we try too hard and that disconnects us. So get the amount of trying right. And then right from the feet, still feeling the feet, to the crown. So remember, we're not taking one instruction away when we say another. It's just that human language cannot say all the instructions simultaneously without it just sounding like madness. Heavy shopping bags in your hands, drawing the collarbones down, and then that counter pulling up from the pelvic floor. Pulling up, I don't know, it's hard to describe the right action. I think you'll intuit it. It's a sort of stopping things from sort of energy that is from just falling out of the body. And of course, that's what the pelvic floor is doing, literally, for the organs as well. Stopping this sort of downward fall. So there's a nudge from the pelvic floor, which is just sort of stopping this escape of energy downwardly, keeping it up, keeping it in the central channel. And then we're going to, with our heavy shopping bags, pulling down, pulls right up through the pelvic floor and through the spinal column to the crown, and feel those two opposing forces. The prana and the apana. The downward force, the apana. The upward force, the prana. And this meeting of these two forces that constitutes haṭhayoga, according to the Yoga Bīja of the 16th century anyway. Let the arms begin to lift as if balloons were inflating. And people with good imagination sometimes will even feel a sort of bobbing of the arms. Keep raising them as the balloons. You can even drape your arms over if it's helpful as the balloons inflate all the way up. Tummy lightly toned. And that Uddiyana Bandha will also reiterate the Mula Bandha. Mula Bandha is the pelvic floor intelligence. Sort of, it's energetic. Oftentimes one interprets these things too simplistically in terms of just like it's a muscle on rather than off. It's actually much more beautiful than that. And then big circle back down, hands to the heart, breathing through the nose. Tadāsana Namaskara. Go ahead and raise up your other foot. Feel into what will be your standing leg foot, into the sesamoid bones, into the arches of the feet, lateral and medial and transverse, not thinking but feeling. And then when you're ready, raise the leg, reach down with your hands to assist it, if you find that useful. Wherever it comes to is fine, except make sure that it's not a good idea to say place the heel directly on the knee. It would be better to cup the knee. Breathing through the nose, soft and calm face, optionally. And this ancient practice of abstaining from following karmic pathways, even if it's just for a few moments. So this is abstaining from the asrava, the influx of karma, creating new karma by abstinence. And some traditions see it also as the burning off of karma. That is habituated tendencies in the nervous system. Very good. Release, place, breathe. Hands on the hips. Step your feet generously apart. Just have a look at the feet, make sure they're equidistant, and then change that so that you bring the right foot forwards towards the shrine side of the room. And the instep of the foot is parallel to the front of the mat. The other foot goes back towards the back of the mat. We ensure that the back toes are not turning out, although they don't have to turn in. To make sure this is holistic, we follow an arc with the knee. So we arc around 4, 5, 6, 7 times or more. And so you feel a pulling from the pubis, the insertion of the adductors, brevis longus magnus, etc. Until there's holism, and you might find moving your foot, what we don't want to do is kind of bring the body in with parts of it protesting still. We want to get those parts and find ways to lure them in before finally coming calmly down. Elbow on the leg, palm up. And still reiteration, is not only allowed but encouraged. If you're ready or want to, you can stretch the top arm up and over, looking up under your armpit, breathing through the nose. Jaw soft, eyes soft, brain soft, throat soft. Iteration and then reiteration of the fibers coming together. This is the Pajva Konasana on the diagonal. Palm down, push into the leg. Inhale, calmly come up. Level calmly your feet up. When you're ready, step 1 back and 1 forwards. Forwards meaning towards this side of the room, and align the one that's forwards so the instep of the foot is parallel to the front of the mat. 1 foot back, 1 foot forwards. So just checking that the back toes don't turn out, and then tracking and retracking this arc. And so when you take the pose on this diagonal position, it becomes extra important to really get this arc going on from the pubis so that you feel increasingly more fibers coming round. And of course, the name of our subject is union or yoga. And if you're ready to come down, you come down. But please feel encouraged to iterate and reiterate, stretching up and maybe over. These are optional arm position. Could just be up, could be up and over, could be neither. Light tone of the tummy, find the pelvic floor. It's a meditation. Jaw is soft, brain is soft, throat is soft. Meditation is a sort of reiteration of commitment to the rich reality of the goddess, the present moment. Just a metaphor. Arm down, palm down, push into the leg, come on up. Walk your feet back again towards tadāsana. Don't underestimate the power of tadāsana. Feet together, arms by your sides. Breathe through the nose. Heavy shopping bags? Yes, please. Same weight on each one, pulling down the collarbones, which you instinctively, I know, will push up against, especially at the pelvic floor. It's just a gathering, it's a sort of support. It's just to stop energy collapsing out of the central channel. So it has this sense of a sort of plug, or just to stop the energy coming out. I've been trying to avoid using words like leaking when I'm talking about the pelvic floor, but talking about energy. So energetic buoyancy going up to the chest and the crown. And this again is our meeting of the sun and moon, according to the Yoga Bīja, which was written very shortly after the the Hatha Pratipika. So around 400, maybe 500 years ago. And those heavy shopping bags pulling down the descending fibers of the trapezius, you're pulling up through the crown of the head, you're buoyant in the pelvic floor. And so these two forces, the downward force, the upward force, simultaneously arising in the body, and their meeting is what is mentioned as the meaning of Hatha yoga in this Yoga Bīja text. So keep that sense of those meetings, of those two energies or two forces. Raise the arms to shoulder height. Bring your hands into the heart center. Step or jump lightly. Tadāsanas. So Tadāsana is the star. Tara means the star. Toned tummy, still that buoyancy on the pelvic floor. Extend energy passionately through the deltoids. So the deltoids are supported by this flowing energy through them. Turn your left toes in, your right foot and your right leg out on the ball of the foot, finishing off the turn on the heel. So you end up with heel to arch alignment, which we will double check every single time. Inhale, exhale, stretch into the back leg, but bend the front leg. Again, iterate and reiterate if you find it useful. So that could involve things like lifting the heel of either foot or even the toes of either foot. And it's all to get incorporation. We're going to turn the head when we feel ready, but we can still work on that alignment or incorporation, which comes about through reiteration. Breathing through the nose. Imagine someone's pulling on your back fingers with love, gently, gently, gently. They might also have a foot pressing into your outer hip on the back leg, outer hip in, inner groin up, pelvic floor buoyant, chest wide and open, head looking forwards, fingertips like the wingtips of an eagle, which are flicked up incidentally. Inhale, come on up with the pelvic floor in your awareness. Turn the feet to the front, hands on the hips. Deep breath through the nose. Reiterated, those deep breaths are a very important part of our yoga practice and the efficacy of it. So take several of those deep breaths before turning your back toes in, turning your front foot and leg out on the ball of the foot, finishing off the turn on the heel, heel to arch alignment, check and recheck. If you're happy and you know it, and if you really want to show it, raise the arms, tone the tummy, find the pelvic floor. Still got that hatha equation, sun and moon. Bend the front knee, stretch into the back leg. It's worth saying that this is a sort of new, when the Yoga Bīja is written, it's a new proposition that ha equates to the sun and ta equates to the moon. It's not exactly how the Sanskrit is. Sanskrit is hatha. It's a word in itself. Just as you might not break house down into hoe and use, say something, or you use your hoe around the house. It's just a sort of a particular device somebody's used. If you haven't turned your head, turn your head. Don't forget iteration and reiteration. Some people will prefer the palms up. That works too. Or even entirely lifted. Like you can have your arms straight up. Warrior number 2. Inhaling, coming on up. Feet face forwards. Hands to hips. Expressive breaths, plural. There was a time when the warrior poses were, so central to yoga class that it wouldn't be called a yoga class without them. But they've gone out of fashion a little bit. I'm bringing them back into fashion. Just like the 80s are back in fashion, no one ever saw that coming. Raise the arms out, lightly tone the tummy, the mullet, the mustache. I've seen them all. They're all back out. And weirdly, they look good. I never expected them to look good. In the 80s, I didn't think they looked good. Turn your back toes in, turn the front foot and leg out, whole body turns. Lift the back heel, externally rotate it. This is Virabhadrasana number 1. Keep the reiterated toning of the tummy, breathing through your nose. Find the pelvic floor. Inhale, raise from your hip joints to fingertips. Exhale, bend your front knee. Play into it. We're eventually standing up from the hip joints, but that will require a stretch of the inner groin of the back leg. It's a sort of twist with a stretch and then releasing, saying yes to the stretch. A stretch is not the whole thing. 2 stepping stones in yoga. A rich experience like a stretch, for example, and then giving to that. Then it becomes yoga. Then it becomes the crossing over. The name Tara, which we've mentioned already, can point to a sense of crossing over. Inhale with the pelvic floor in your awareness, coming up, turn back to the front and big circle with the arms. Hands to the hips, breathing deep, optionally praising one of your favorite cities, for example, Paris. Raising your arms, I turn the palms. It's not one of my, it's just a city. It's lovely though. I like all the cities, maybe not. Back toes in, front foot and leg out, whole body's turning. Don't forget to lift the back heel, externally rotate it, and then bring it down again. So you turn the heel out, in other words. That's an internal rotation of the thigh. And don't forget to walk up to, but not beyond hip width, across the width of the mat with tone from the get-go in the tum, reiterated as if you were combing hair, and getting the fibers to agree with each pass of the comb. More fibers come along. Inhale, exhale, bend the front knee. And again, we're working straight away into the stretch of the psoas from the inner groin of the back leg across the lateral pubis. And from there it goes underneath the abdominals into the sides of the lower spine, into the sides of the lower spine. And I really do think the more you can sort of visualize where the psoas is, the better you can work with it. Heels can raise, whether it be the back heel or the front heel, if that can be utilized to bring about more and more agreement. So personally, I think most people will find the back heel, the raising up, useful, and even the little toe side of the back foot useful. And some will find even the front heel raising up, but not all. Toning that tummy, stretching that inner groin of the back leg, and giving to the stretch. Perhaps more importantly, inhale, come up with the pelvic floor in your awareness, turn back to the front, big circle, hands to hips, 2, 3, 4 or more deep breaths. Walk your feet towards each other. We're going to take 1 to 2 blocks, which we can do whenever we're ready. We're going to place, first of all, 1 block or 2 blocks, up to you, in front of the foot, ready for Parsvakonasana. Easier to get rid of equipment than to get it, so if you're not sure, have more, and then flick one away if you don't need it. Back toes in, front foot and leg out on the ball of the front foot. Finish off the turn on the heel at the last bit. Should guarantee heel to arch alignment. And then raise the arms. Inhaling, raising the ribs, releasing the neck, stretch into the back leg, iterate and reiterate, find fibers that are lost, and then coming down to your 1 or 2 bricks, and of course you can have them higher if you want. On the big toe side, try and bring the knee as close to above the ankle as you can. Good job. And then stretch up. And that optionally stretch over. It can be useful to lift the back heel to get more movement of that arm. And looking up under the armpit, breathing deep through the nose, lightly toning the tum. and reiterating. Keeping the jaw from the three gurus, gripping, grasping, grabbing. Coming on up. You can use your leg to help you, and we're going to move the blocks, obviously, to the other side. This is Parsvakonasana again. So deep, natural breaths through the nose, back toes in, front foot and leg out, heel to arch alignment to be checked, and then checked again. The kneecap turning to face the gap between the second and third toe. Stretch and lift the ribs and find that lovely, intimate, conversational buoyancy of the pelvic floor. Conversational. A conversation is permeable, isn't it? Hopefully. Both people in the conversation are permeable. Otherwise, it's a monologue, isn't it? Inhale, exhale. So we want a conversation with the pelvic floor. And then descending when you're ready, any height. Take your time, the body melts at its own pace. Big toe side, stretching up, maybe, optionally. And then some people will find, as I mentioned before, lifting the back heel can be helpful in getting that big stretch over. Light tone in the tum, breathing through the nose. That conversational buoyancy at the pelvic floor. Jaw soft. You can take more blocks, Ollie, if it's something catching in the top of the thigh. Yeah. Take that cork one and put it on top. Good plan. If you need to come up, come up. But if you're Ollie, just go back in. Inhale, come up. If you're not Ollie, obviously, you're speaking universally, we are all Ollie. Good. And then turning your feet to the front. Do that work better with more height? Yeah, good. Breathing through the nose. Jaw soft, hands on the hips. Find the pelvic floor. Everyone's got one. And then walk your feet towards each other and have a little kick out, a little moment to kick or stretch out. Now, you might need more blocks or to turn the blocks higher for what we're going to do, which I call the crab looking for his or her or their contact lenses. So, but some people call it the goddess pose. But I think crab looking for contact lenses is by far a more interesting and sophisticated name for it. And although I don't like to think of crabs with visual impairments, they do have quite prominent eyes. And I suppose my imagination is quite rife. We're going to turn the toes out. Remember, good idea, Ollie. So give yourself as much blockage as you need. Turning the toes out as much as you can while feeling safe and well. Okay. And then bending the knees, you might be comfortable to turn the toes out a bit more by moving perhaps the heels or the toes themselves. And breathing through the nose. Good. Now, with the goddess pose, sometimes people bring the arms up like this, and this is where it becomes irresistible for me I can't resist to become a crab. Okay, so you can have little crab pincers if you want. And crabs have got a little funky thing that goes on, right? They do a little funky thing. I think I'm right in saying they also quite like the moon. They reach up to the moon. It's been pretty full recently. But occasionally they'll drop their contact lens or monocle. Some crabs, of course, you probably know this from David Attenborough programs, wear monocles. So they will have to reach down to scurry in the seabed to look for said monocle. Now, something I like to do, but maybe I should get out more, is lift both my toes up. Right? But you might think, well, that makes it very tricky. So that's optional. But if I lift my toes up, I can turn my legs out more. Coming back up by straightening the legs. Takes a lot of strength. Well done. And turn the feet forwards. Walk the feet towards each other. Breathe easy. Arms by your sides. Tadāsana. Nasal breathing. Feet together or apart. It's okay as long as they're level. Worth checking if they are level. And just letting the breath catch up with you, or you catch up with the breath as you want to put it. Stretch the arms out when you're ready. Loosen off like you're, a goddess merging back with herself, which is what you are. It's a metaphor. Don't worry if you don't get the metaphor, if you find it too overly poetical. I'll say other things less poetical, like I'll talk about crabs looking for contact lenses. Right arm over the top of the left. Stretching it down through. Iterate the same thing. Maybe more than once, maybe 2 or 3 or 4 times. I'll just move this microphone while you're doing that. The idea of getting the arms as far over as possible before a full wrap round. And then remember that a lot of progress can be made in small steps. If you take a lot of small steps, instead of trying to take 2 or 3 big strides, take a lot of small steps. The small steps are little tiny adjustments, but multiple. And breathe into it. Breathe into it. Keep the jaw passive, keep the eyes passive, keep the brain surrendered. Brain surrendered. That buoyant conversational support from the pelvic floor. Buoyant conversational support. Nice and easy, release the arms. Take a breath, or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 12 or 18. Other numbers are available. If you're ready, you can stretch your arms out in this sort of goddess surrendering to the goddess. Toned tummy, responsive, conversational pelvic floor. She surrenders to her source to find her powers. She surrenders to her source to find her powers. Other arm over the top and hold it just to stretch. So you can pull, if you want to find your own way to pull on the deltoid gently. And then if you remember a stretch isn't enough, you've got to breathe into it, but be what we need it to be, and breathe into it. Breath is everything. Eyes are soft, brain is soft, throat is soft. Okay, slow and easy release if you're ready. And then 2 or 3 or 4 more, strongly reiterated, clear intention to get as much of the arms crossed over as high up as possible before a slow and steady iteration, reiteration, multiple movements make big strides come together. Multiple movements, not just 1 or 2, multiple movements. Breath is everything. Find the pelvic floor, head aligned with the spine. Everyone's got a pelvic floor. More meditative than mechanical. Meditative than mechanical. Very good. Slow and easy. Release. Take some deep breaths. Shake it out or shake it off, as Taylor Swift once said in one of her popular music smash hits. And then we're going to turn towards the middle, turn towards the center. With our feet close or together. Take the foot that's furthest away from me backwards onto the toe tips. So, and then feel that stretch going up from the pubis through the chest. So there's a sort of an elegance to it. Raise the arms, maintaining that reiterated tummy tone and the gracefulness that goes with it. Driving energy up into the hip joint of the standing leg by pushing down with intelligence and investigative awareness into the standing leg foot. Take your back leg foot back further and further until it starts coming up. And then drive that energy up to the hip joint of the standing leg until you start tipping forwards. How far doesn't matter. No further than parallel to the floor. You don't have to get to parallel to the floor. Virabhadrasana, tree, or number 3. Breathing through the nose, making sure not to externally rotate the top leg. So little toe side of the foot down. Good job, inhale to come up. Touch the toes. Take a circle, step your foot. Catch your breath. Find the pelvic floor. You can do this with the arms by your sides as well, by the way, if it's tough to raise the arms up. Taking your other toes back, the other foot, back foot behind you. Light tone on the tummy, reiterated. So this is a movement up, combed up from the pubis, arm raising. Unless that's tricky, you can do this without raising the arms. And then that still reiterated stretch right up through that you can feel into any way that works for you. And then keep taking the toes back. We're driving energy up through to the standing leg hip joint. And we keep doing that. And as the energy reaches the hip joint, it tilts us forwards. The Virabhadrasana, tree or 3. Deep natural breath. Extension in 2 directions. Little toe side of the top leg foot down. Inhaling up. Big circle. Foot forwards, hands to heart. Deep breaths. Release your hands and take a strap and put it around your upper arms. So it's tied up. We're going to be coming into Adho Mukha Svanasana. So it's going to come around the elbow height. You can use, if you haven't got a yoga belt at home, dressing gown belts can work. Sometimes they make quite good noises, like what, what? Make sure it's a stingy shoulder width, because it will feel looser when you come into the pose. And it's around the elbows or a little bit higher. And then when you've made your zombie-like arms, then you're going to come down to your Adho Mukha Svanasana. Remember, it should be stingy shoulder width, so don't be generous with this. Be generous in the rest of your life, but not with this. So near or even on the elbows, and then the head goes through, if you can, behind the belt, as it were. So you might take the belt a tiny bit lower if you can't get your head through. Open up the inner armpit, open up the outer armpit, open up the under armpit.
The inner armpit opens through visualization of the movement from the armpit to the groins. The outer armpit opens at the same time following the inner. So the inner keeps going, and the outer, and it's the pacemaker, as it were, pace setter. And then the outer one is following. And then the under armpit is if you imagine a line separating the top and the bottom of the armpit. The under armpit is the bottom side near the hips, and that stretches towards the hips, while the top part stretches towards the heel of the hand. It's a meditation of opposites, just as the hatha practice is, and this meditation of opposites is commonly used in the modern practice of Yoga Nidra. Contemporary Yoga Nidra, as Kadeen Morcom has called it in her dissertation. Okay, well done. Excellent. Down you come to regular, as they say in Spanish, regular kneeling. And you can use a block, you can use a blanket, block between the heels and buttocks, blanket then neatly rolled underneath the front ankles. Breathing through your nose, and some people will want to roll a little bit side to side in this, and that's optional. I find, in my experience, the body often moves as a way of avoiding the mind concretizing or sort of fixating, becoming fixated on anything in particular. So the particular, the particles, and the field, the wave particle duality. If you look at things individually, they become as particle, particular, individual, little discrete units. But the ultimate reality of any particle is the field or the wave, moves as a wave. So it's a sort of frequency. Every electron is part of the electron field. Ultimately, there's no electron that will move without having an effect on the entire electron field. It covers the expanse of space and time. Okay, when you're ready, extend out your legs in front of you. Now, in a parallel universe, the next pose is really popular. Bring your hands behind your head. So we can keep in mind the people doing this pose in the parallel universe and how happy they would be and are as we're doing it. We can think of them as we come back by 60 degrees and raise up by 30. Toes level with the eyes. Trembling is accepted. This is Ardha Navasana. Looking straight at the toes. Wonderful. Bend your knees, hug your legs. I'm impressed. Lift your chest, loosen your back. So sometimes movement, it's obviously up to you what's effective, but sometimes movement helps to just kind of loosen the lower back and thereby bring the possibility of lengthening the lower back. In that same parallel universe, where the occupants of that universe are currently rejoicing, having done half boat pose, they love even more the full boat pose. They have, in fact, huge celebrations whenever anyone does one. And so to celebrate their culture in this parallel universe, we'll lean back by 30 degrees and raise the legs up by 60 degrees. Parupuna Navasana. Can do it with bent legs if you need to, although those in the parallel universe would never do such a thing. Jaw soft, eyes soft, breathing through the nose. It's probably the only time that anyone ever practices this pose is when someone else asks them to. Okay, come down, cross your legs. Draw the buttock flesh out and back.
Let the breath flow. Do it as many times as feels right. The iteration and reiteration of the buttock flesh isn't just about the buttock flesh. It's about the position of the sitting bones. It's about tuning out of patterns of gripping, grasping, grabbing. And it's about the release of the adductors, the inner thighs. Breathe through your nose if you can. Pull on your shins if you want to help you get a little bit of a feel of lightness in the lumbar. Just pull on the shins. Just gently, so that as you pull, the back of the body travels gently forwards, the front of the body lifts up gently. And the breath just flows, it just flows. A pose is completed when the yogin is fully occupies it. There's not a single part of the pose that isn't suffused by the yogin's awareness. And there's not a part of the yogin's awareness that is not suffused by the pose. Not a single part of our awareness is in on anything else. That's when the pose is completed. So it's not about how flexible you are, but about the levels of agreement. Levels of agreement. Inhale, lift. Exhale, turn towards this beautiful shrine with Padmasambhava. And it's the revolved or Parivrita Sukhasana, revolved Parivrita Sukhasana, turning towards Padmasambhava. Eyes soft, brain soft, knees soft. So resistance is our raw material that we turn into absorption. Just like Rumpelstiltskin, whose name is actually pronounced differently to that, I think, Rumpelstiltskin or something. Just as in those Ladybird books about that character, he would spin straw into gold. What we think of as useless resistance is actually the raw materials that gets to be transformed into absorption. Absorption is absorption in the field. And absorption in the field is what negates clinging. Clinging is just not possible. Nobody can stop clinging. No person can say, oh, clinging is bad, I shouldn't cling. That's not possible. That a person should not cling. But clinging just doesn't arrive if you're absorbed in the field. It just falls away. That's why the field is so important, why we call it the mother, why we call it the goddess. Lift, turn, keep lifting and turning with Padmasambhava at your back. What could be better? Breathing through the nose. Relax the soles of your feet. There's only one way to relax the soles of the feet. You can't do it. I can't do it. A person can't do it. The relaxation of the soles of the feet is the very dissolution of that experience of a person as discrete, and autonomous. So remember, the pose is not complete. It doesn't matter if you get bored, you think I could be doing something more, instead of this relatively mild twist with crossed legs, I could be doing a handstand right now, something really useful, really powerful, really transformative. But the really powerful stuff in yoga happens when we realize that the pose is complete only when we've transformed or transmuted resistance back into absorption. And in so doing, we will cleanse the nerves. Okay, release and return to center. Take deep breaths, 2, 3, 4 or more. And then extend the legs out. Remember which leg you got crossed in front of which for later on. Just make a note, the right or the left. Legs drawn out, belt nearby. Buttock flesh drawn out and back. Buttock flesh drawn out and back. So if you find that sitting on the floor after having drawn the buttock flesh out and back, you can't feel any elevation or lightness in the lumbar, then sit on a block. Because the starting point is lightness and elevation in the lumbar. So hands by your side, the belt nearby for in a moment. We start in a mild tadāsana with the toes soft and broad, the lower back in and up, which we might need to sit on a block to facilitate that. And then we'll take our belt, we'll take our strap, we're going to bring it around the balls of the feet. And some haṭhayoga texts tell us that we should practice paschimottanasana or brahmacharyasana every day. So as we pull gently on the belt, without making any tension in the back, we elevate the back and we experiment and encourage release of the hamstrings. So if you lean, for example, towards one side and the other, that will begin to hydrate the hamstrings, melt some extraneous tissue, and it might begin to open tiny little pockets of opportunity where you might feel, it might not show on the outside, but you might feel it on the inside that the pelvis begins to tip a little, the top of the front pelvis tipping towards the legs. And just keep breathing into it. So mission number 1, upright and light. Right? So that you've got to tick that box before you think about anything else. If mission number 1 is fully absorbed, mission number 2 will start by itself. The pelvis will go from backwards to upright, from upright to forwards over a long arc of time. We're not saying that forwards is better than upright, or even that upright is better than collapsed backwards, although it is. What we're looking for is melting. So try getting those hamstrings to melt, because they are the key to the pelvis turning, and the pelvis turning is the key to coming forwards in paschimottanasana. Some people got short legs, long arms, and might be able to hold the big toes instead of using the belt. That's an option. Not wise to do that if it's making your goddess channel closed, central channel. Keep breathing free and natural. Eyes soft, brain soft, throat soft. Melting, massaging paschimottanasana. It's a lot of skill to paschimottanasana, a lot of skill, because you're looking to create and move into opportunities as and when. Opportunities as and when. But being a Shakta, somebody who worships the goddess, we make sure not to close the goddess channel. In this way, we're not really interested in what anyone else is doing, only that our own process of knocking on the door. Can I come through? Yes or no. If there's a yes, you go through. If there's a no, you keep knocking, politely but persistently. Okay, wherever you were at, we will come up nice and easy from there. The cross of the legs is taken with the other one in front to the one you had in front before. Buttock flesh is drawn out and back. Sitting on a block if it feels lighter in the lumbar. Breathing through your nose, if you can. Imagine 3 channels. Central channel, straightforward enough, pelvic floor to the tadāsana. Excuse me, tadāsana is 12 finger widths above the crown of the head. And the pelvic floor is the pelvic floor. So there's a straight line in front of the spine. And you can imagine there's a channel on either side of that central channel. And we can imagine 2 other channels. In this practice, we imagine them co-terminating at the Ajna chakra, at the forehead center. Some people call that the third eye, the Ajna chakra. Ajna or Agnya means command. So the central channel runs through that. The other 2 channels run from that in arcs, and then they re-meet the central channel at the pelvic floor. So you've got 1 straight line central channel, 2 bowed arcs, bowing outward, like bows that are facing outwardly, that co-terminate with the central channel at the Agnya chakra, forehead center, and the pelvic floor. And you can allow movement to help you feel into those. We're going to imagine that as we breathe in through the left channel down to the pelvic floor. We hold the breath at the pelvic floor before breathing, seeing if any of that energy will escape up through the central channel. And if not, breathing what's left out through the right channel. So this is cycling from the forehead center with the inhalations through the left channel, held at the pelvic floor for a moment, inviting any energy that might want to escape up the central channel to do so with the exhalation, or exhaling simply through the right channel, or some through the right channel. So keep that going in your own time. Through the left, bow down to the pelvic floor, holding. If some of the energy can release on the exhale through the central channel, allow it, otherwise it releases through the left. Through the right. Sometimes it would just all escape through the central channel with an exhale, and the spine might feel more upright. Other times, some will escape up the central channel with the exhale, some will go through the right. And other times, it will all go through the right. When it goes up through the central channel, it's immediately centering. Last round after the one you're on. And oftentimes one enters into a profound stillness. Everything nirodha, everything stops. We're going to take that stillness with us for a briefish shavasana. Still in our time constraints, just about. So we're going to lay on our backs with that stillness coming with us. Palms facing up, shoulder blades scooted under. Yes is the answer. Full weight of the limbs, totally released, immediately, totally released. That includes the head. Skin all over the body is soft. Permeable. Borderlines melt. Borderlines melt. Feel into your body investigatively, enjoyably. Maybe moving your toes, maybe moving your fingers, maybe stretching out an arm or a leg. Natural investigative movements that eventually lead to us stretching more dynamically and eventually bending the legs, placing the soles of the feet onto the floor, scooting the buttocks under, releasing the lower back with another extra deep breath. Before rolling onto our sides, facing away from Padmasambhava. And then rolling back towards Padmasambhava, the so-called second Buddha, according that is to the Tibetan tradition. Or I should call it the northern tradition actually, because it's not just Tibet, it's Bhutan and other places. And coming up when you're ready from the side, using your arms to assist your ascent. And bringing your hands into a prayer position. And we'll affirm the following sentence with Hung, which is associated with Padmasambhava. May any benefit gained in our acting in this way this morning go to the alleviation of the suffering of all beings. Hum. Thanks very much for coming, Roomers and Zoomers. Maybe some of the Zoomers are wearing bloomers. Don't think so, though. No. Thank you very much for coming, guys. Great to see you. Thank you. You. See you real soon. It's a beautiful day, isn't it? Hey. Ciao. Lovely to see you. See you soon, I hope. Love you. Bye.